Hello there, and welcome to Deep Earth Stories. Tonight we go somewhere most people have never thought to look. Not forward into the future, not sideways into space, but backward, deep backward, into a time so old, so quiet, so forgotten, that even the stones have stopped trying to explain it. Get comfortable, turn the lights down if you can. Because what we are about to explore together has been waiting a very, very long time for someone to listen. But before that, tell me in comments, where are you listening from and what time is there right now? Tonight, we're going to take a very long, very slow journey together. There is no rush. There is nowhere we need to be. This is not a race, and there are no tests at the end. You do not even need to stay fully awake. In fact, if your eyes feel heavy after a few minutes, that is perfectly fine. That is more than fine. That is the whole point. So take a breath, a slow one. Let your shoulders drop a little. Let your jaw unclench if it was clenched. Let your hands relax open on the blanket or the pillow beside you. Good, just like that. Tonight I want to tell you a story about our planet, about this place we call home. But not the Earth as it is now, with its cities and roads and electric lights. No, I want to take you much, much further back. Back before any of that. Back to a time when the world was still figuring itself out. A time when enormous creatures walked through forests that no longer exist. When the seas were warmer and higher. When the sky was full of birds the size of small airplanes. When flowers were still a new and beautiful experiment. We are going back to the Cenozoic Era. You might not have heard that word before, or maybe you learned it once in school and forgot it. That is okay. It simply means the most recent chapter in the long, long book of Earth's history. The Cenozoic began about 66 million years ago, right after a great and terrible event that changed everything, and it continues in a way right up to this very moment, right up to tonight, as you lie here, listening. In some ways, you're still living in the Cenozoic. This era has not fully ended. We are still inside it. But the deeper we go into the past, the stranger the world becomes. The more alien, and yet somehow, the more beautiful too. So tonight, that is where we're going. Into deep time, into a world that was warm and wild and full of life in forms we can barely imagine. There is no need to hold on tight. Just breathe and let the story carry you. If your eyes feel heavy, let them close. If your thoughts start to drift, let them drift. I will still be here telling the story softly, just for you. Let us begin. Chapter 1. After the fire. Imagine you are floating very high above the Earth. Not in a spaceship with bright lights and hissing machines, but floating gently, quietly, the way you sometimes float in dreams. You are high enough to see the curve of the planet below you, high enough to see whole continents at once. And what you see, if you could somehow look back 66 million years, would be a world in shock. Not long before the moment we're looking at, something happened. Something enormous and fast and terrible in a world that was otherwise very, very slow. A rock from space, a rock wider than Mount Everest is tall, came screaming through the sky and hit the Earth near what we now call the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. The impact was so powerful that it sent clouds of dust and debris high into the atmosphere. It triggered fires across half the planet. It caused earthquakes and tsunamis and a darkness that lasted for years. The dinosaurs, those great ancient rulers of the land, were mostly gone within a few thousand years. Gone in what is, in Earth's terms, a single breath. This event is called the Cretaceous extinction. Scientists sometimes call it the KP boundary, the KP event. It marks the end of one world and the beginning of another, and that new world, that beginning, is where our story starts tonight. The air above this ancient Earth still carries a kind of heaviness to it. Ash, dust, tiny particles of rock that have been thrown so high, they have spread like a thin grey veil across the whole sky. The sunlight, when it finally returns, filters through in muted amber tones, softer than normal, like late afternoon light on a cloudy day stretched out across years. Below the haze, the landscape is slowly waking up again. Some of the forests are gone. Huge swaths of land that were once covered in rich green canopy now lie under a thick layer of grey ash. But the land is patient. The land has done this before, in its own way. It knows how to come back. Slowly, in the warmth that still lingers in the soil, seeds begin to stir. Spores of ferns, which are very tough and very old, send up tiny green curls through the grey. Then low shrubs. Then grasses. Then, over thousands of years, trees. The world is repainting itself green, and is to this new green world slowly and carefully crept the survivors. Not all life had been lost in the impact. Deep in the oceans, things stirred and continued. Small mammals, tiny, shrew-like creatures that had spent the age of dinosaurs hiding underground, living in the dark, eating insects and roots, now emerged into a world that no longer belonged to the great lizards. Birds, which had evolved from a branch of the dinosaur family, survived as well. Certain reptiles, certain fish, certain insects and plants. The world was wounded, but it was alive, and from this wounded, quiet, slowly recovering world, everything that came after, every forest, every ocean creature, every bird, every mammal, every primate, yeah, every human now would eventually grow. For a moment, just breathe. Feel how slowly this is moving. How many millions of years are passing in just a few sentences. Time does not move the way we experience it in our daily lives. Time, in deep history, is like the slowest river you can imagine, so slow you cannot see it moving, but it is always moving. Let that thought rest softly in your mind as we continue. The early Cenozoic, the first part of this long era, is called the Paleogene. Specifically, its earlier section is called the Paleocene epoch. The word epoch just means a chunk of time. The Paleocene lasted from about 66 million years ago to about 56 million years ago. 10 million years. 10 million years of slow, steady rebuilding. What was the world like then? Picture it like this. You're no longer floating above the planet. Now you're standing on the ground. The ground feels soft and rich beneath your feet, dark soil that holds moisture well. Around you, trees grow in every direction. Not quite like the forests you might know today, but something close. Broad leaves catching the warm, filtered light. A dampness to the air that reminds you of a greenhouse or a rainy day in spring that never quite ends. The temperature is warm, not burning hot but comfortably warm. Even near the poles, the climate is much milder than today. There is no permanent ice at the North or South Pole in the early Paleocene. The planet is warmer, softer, more even in its temperatures from north to south. You listen carefully and the forest is full of sound. Insects buzz and click and hum. Birds call from the canopy above. Somewhere in the undergrowth, something small rustles through the leaves. That small rustling, that is what you are looking for. The first mammals of the Cenozoic are small. Many of them are not much bigger than a cat, and most are considerably smaller than that. They scurry and burrow and climb and creep. They are quick and nervous, still carrying in their bones the memory of a world where bigger things hunted them. But that world is gone now. And slowly, generation by generation, these small creatures begin to change, to grow, to experiment with new ways of living. Some begin to eat more fruit, climbing into the trees where food hangs in abundance. Some begin to eat more grass and low plants, growing larger and more powerful in the legs. Some begin to hunt other small animals, the teeth growing sharper, their claws curving into tools. It is one of the quietest revolutions in the history of life. No grand announcement, no sudden change, just a slow, patient exploration of a world suddenly full of open spaces. Let us drift just a little further into this early world before we rest. Chapter 2. The Warm Age of the Paleocene Forest. Imagine now that you have been given the gift of patience. Imagine you could sit in one place for 1,000 years and watch. Not aging, not sleeping, just watching. What would you see? In the Paleocene forests, you would see the canopy thicken. Year by year, the trees grow taller. The undergrowth becomes denser. The diversity of plants expands. Flowering plants, which had only appeared relatively recently before the extinction, now bloom in extraordinary variety. Flowers of every shape and colour, impollinated by insects, visited by the earlier small mammals who discover that nectar and fruit are wonderful things. The relationship between flowering plants and animals is one of the great quiet partnerships of Earth's history. Plants grow fruit that is sweet and appealing so that animals will eat it and carry their seeds to new places. Animals gain food and energy. Plants gain transportation. Everyone benefits. It is a deal made without words, without thought, without any intention at all, just the long, patient work of natural selection across millions of years. You watch as mammals grow. The first true hoofed animals begin to appear. Strange creatures, not quite like the deer or horses we would recognize today, but something in between the old world and the new. 4 legs, warm blood, young born alive and fed on mother's milk. These are the ungulates, the ancestors of almost every large land animal you have ever seen at a zoo or on a nature documentary. The forests of the Paleocene are their nursery. There are also, in these early forests, the very first primates. Not quite monkeys, not quite apes, but creatures with grasping hands and forward-facing eyes. Features that would eventually, after tens of millions of years of small changes, lead to us. They are small, they live in trees, they eat insects and fruit. They call softly to each other in the forest dark. You could walk past one of them and not give it a second thought. There is nothing about them yet that says, this one will matter. But deep time has a way of proving first impressions wrong. For a moment, just breathe. If your eyes feel heavy, that is okay. Let them close. I will keep going, and soft and slow, and the story will still be here when you drift back to it. The Paleocene is a time of extraordinary rebuilding. Scientists studying this period sometimes call it an evolutionary explosion. Not because it happened fast, but because after the silence of the extinction, life began filling every empty space with new experiments. New kinds of creatures, trying out new strategies. Some of those experiments failed. Species appeared, lived for 1 million years, and then vanished without leaving any clear descendants. This happens more often than we might expect. Life is not efficient, it is extravagant. It throws out hundreds of ideas to see which ones work. But some of those experiments succeeded wildly, and the ones that succeeded, the mammals, the birds, the flowering plants, the insects, would together build the world that, in 66 million years later, you and I would be born into. It is a strange and humbling thing to think about. All of that life, all of those generations, all of that slow, patient change, just to arrive at this night, with you lying there and me telling you this story. It makes the quiet feel a little sacred, doesn't it? Let us move into the next chapter slowly, as if we're walking through tall grass in the early morning. Chapter 3. The Warmest World, the Eocene and the PETM. Now we come to one of the most remarkable moments in the whole Cenozoic story. a moment that scientists find both fascinating and, in some ways, quietly unsettling. A moment that holds a kind of mirror up to our own world. It happened about 56 million years ago, right at the border between the Paleocene and the next epoch, which is called the Eocene. The event is called the Paleocene-Eocene Thermal Maximum, or the PETM if you want the shorter version. In the language of deep time, what happened was almost sudden. Over a period of perhaps 20,000 years, which is fast in geological terms, a massive amount of carbon dioxide and methane was released into the atmosphere. Where it came from, scientists are still debating. It may have come from volcanic activity. It may have come from frozen pockets of methane in the seafloor that were disturbed and released. It may have been a combination of many things happening at once, but what it caused was clear. The Earth's temperature rose by somewhere between 5 and 8 degrees Celsius, globally, everywhere, in about 20,000 years. The oceans warmed. Many deep-sea creatures died as the chemistry of the water changed. In some places, rainfall patterns shifted dramatically. Some regions that had been lush and green became dry and difficult. Other regions became even more tropical. And yet, life adapted. The mammals that were just beginning to find their footing in the post-dinosaur world now faced a warming planet. And their response was interesting. Many of them got smaller. There is a principle in biology that says that in warmer climates, animals tend to be smaller, because a smaller body loses heat more easily. Scientists call this Bergmann's rule. During the PETM, some mammals shrank by as much as 30% compared to their ancestors. Imagine that. A world so warm that horses were about the size of small cats. The early horses of this time, small three-toed creatures called eohippers, os or dawn horse, were about the size of a golden retriever. Fragile-looking, wide-eyed, living in the dense tropical forest that covered even what is now Wyoming or England. Yes, England, with tropical forests. During the Eocene, which followed the PETM and lasted from about 56 million to 34 million years ago, the Earth was one of the warmest it had been in its entire history. Palm trees grew in the Arctic. Crocodiles sunned themselves on beaches near what would one day be London. Dense rainforest stretched across enormous swathes of the Northern Hemisphere. It was lush. It was warm. It was incredibly, almost overwhelmingly alive. If you could stand in a field in what is now the middle of Europe during the Eocene, you would feel heat immediately. The air would be thick and humid, just the way it feels before a summer thunderstorm. Giant ferns would curl around your ankles. The calls of birds and insects would be layered on top of each other like music. You might look up and see something enormous moving through the trees. Not a dinosaur, those are long gone, but a creature just as impressive in its own way. A large mammal, prehistoric and majestic, picking its way slowly through the undergrowth. The Eocene was the era of many strange and beautiful mammal experiments. Creatures that looked like nothing alive today. Creatures that sat somewhere between what came before and what came after. Halfway shapes in the long march of evolution. There were the mesonychids, hoofed predators that hunted like wolves but looked nothing like them, with huge feet and strange low skulls. There were winthatheres, massive, rhinoceros-like creatures with bony knobs on their heads and long tusks, lumbering through the swampy forests. There were early whales, still half walking, half swimming, creatures that had once lived on land and were only just beginning to discover the sea. That last detail is worth sitting with for a moment. Whales, those vast, graceful, singing creatures of the deep ocean, were once land animals. Their ancestors walked on 4 legs through coastal forests and marshes during the early Eocene. Over millions of years, they spent more and more time in the water. Their back legs slowly shrunk and became flippers. Their front legs became paddles. Their nostrils moved from the front of their face to the top of their heads, becoming the blowholes we know today. This transition took about 15 million years, slow and steady and patient. Scientists have found fossils that show this change step by step. There is one creature, called Pachycetus, which looked roughly like a land mammal, but lived near water and was comfortable in both. A little later, there is Ambulocetus, the walking whale, which could move on land but was clearly more comfortable swimming. And then, further along, creatures that were fully aquatic, that never returned to land at all. A land creature becoming a sea creature, generation by generation. A body changing shape as slowly as a cloud. For a moment, just breathe. If your mind is wandering, that is perfectly fine. Let it wander. These ideas do not need to be held tightly. They are soft things, meant to float through your thoughts like leaves on a slow river. If your eyes are already closed, that is wonderful. You are safe. You are still. The story is here with you. The Eocene lasted 22 million years. 22 million years of warmth and abundance and wild experimentation. By the end of it, the world was beginning to cool, very slowly at first, a degree here, a degree there, but cooling nonetheless. And that cooling would bring something new, something that would change the whole shape of the world again. But we do not need to rush there yet. For now, let the warm Eocene forest wrap around you like a blanket. Let the humid air and the soft sounds of an ancient forest hold you. Let your breathing slow. Let the night deepen around you. We have time. We have all the time in the world. Chapter 4. A world full of strange giants. Before we drift out of this early part of the Cenozoic, I want to tell you about some of the creatures that lived in these ancient landscapes, not the ones you already know from museums or films. The stranger ones, the ones that almost no one talks about, because the early Cenozoic was full of giants, not in the way the dinosaur age was full of giants, not that kind of long-necked, shaking the earth thundering enormity. These were different giants, warmer giants, mammals in shapes and sizes that seem almost like something from a dream. Let me take you to the Eocene, somewhere in the ancient forests of what will one day become Pakistan and India. The land here is flat and green and very, very warm. There are rivers winding slowly through the trees. The air smells of mud and water and green growing things. And in the shallows of one of those rivers something moves. It is large. Larger than anything you would expect in a riverbank. It lifts its massive head and looks at you with small, calm eyes. Its skin is grey and thick and hairless, running with water. It breathes slowly. It does not seem afraid. This is Andrewsarchus, one of the largest mammalian land predators that ever lived. It looked, in some ways, like an enormous wolf with a horse's body. 6 feet tall at the shoulder, a skull the size of a large coffee table, teeth that could crush bone, and yet, despite its size and its fearsome appearance, scientists are not entirely sure whether it was a hunter or a scavenger, or both. It may have spent time near water, as its fossils were found in coastal environments. It may have eaten shellfish. It may have walked the line between predator and opportunist. There is something I find very calming about that uncertainty. The idea that even our greatest scientists, with all their tools and knowledge, can look at the bones of an enormous creature and still say, we are not entirely sure what this was. The world is full of unanswered questions, and that is beautiful. Moving north into what is now Europe, the forest changes slightly, still warm, still lush, but a little different in character. Here, in these ancient woodlands, another creature wanders. This one is called Lophiodon, and it looks like a cross between a tapir and a small rhinoceros. It moves through the underbrush slowly, eating leaves and soft plants. It is not a predator. It is gentle in its way, unhurried. It will leave no living descendants. That is another thing about deep time. Most of the lines of a life that existed, or even millions of years of successful lines, eventually end. It is not a tragedy exactly. It is simply the way of things. Species are like flames. They burn bright for a while, and then they gently go out, and new flames take their place. Even we, someday, will be replaced. But that is a thought for another night. For now, picture the forests. Picture the enormous, gentle creatures moving through them. Picture a world that is warm and full and alive, buzzing with life in every direction. A world without a single human footprint anywhere on it. Just life, doing what it does, slowly and patiently and beautifully. Now let us prepare for the next part of our journey. We are still in the early Cenozoic, still in the deep warmth of the Eocene, but the world is beginning to change. Something is coming, not fast, not violently, but steadily. Or a cooling, a shift. And from that shift a whole new world will emerge. But there is no rush. For now, let the warm Eocene hold you. Let the soft sounds of ancient forests play softly in your mind. Let your body settle deeper into wherever you're resting. The world has been here for billions of years, and it will be here for billions more. And tonight, for this small, quiet moment, so will you. Tonight we're continuing our slow journey through the Cenozoic Era, through the deep history of this planet we call home, through a time so ancient that the very shape of the continents was different. The oceans were in different places, the air was different, the creatures were different, and yet, in some quiet, fundamental way, the world was still the same, still turning slowly, still breathing, still patient. We left off in the warm, lush world of the Eocene, a world of tropical forests stretching all the way to the poles, a world of giant strange mammals and early whales and small wide-eyed primates in the trees, a world warm and abundant and full, but change was coming. It always is. Let us drift gently into that change now. The Eocene ended around 34 million years ago. Scientists mark its ending with a moment they call the Grande Coupure. In French, that means the Great Cut. It is a name that sounds dramatic, but the event itself was slow and quiet, and in some ways almost invisible as it happened. Over millions of years the Earth had been cooling, very slightly, very gradually. The warmth of the early Cenozoic was beginning to ease, like a fire dying down from a raw to a slow, steady glow. There were reasons for this cooling. The continents were moving. The great landmasses of the Earth drift slowly across the surface of the planet, carried on enormous slabs of rock called tectonic plates. Over millions of years, these plates shift. Oceans open where there was once land. Mountains rise where there was once a shallow sea. And around 34 million years ago, something important happened in the geography of the southern hemisphere. The continent of Antarctica separated fully from South America. A gap opened between them, the Drake Passage, the wild stretch of stormy ocean between the tip of South America and the frozen continent to the south. And through that gap, a current of cold ocean water began to flow. Around and around Antarctica it circled, unbroken, uninterrupted. This current is called the Antarctic Circumpolar Current. And it changed everything. Before this current existed, warm tropical water from the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans could flow southward and warm Antarctica. But once the circumpolar current was established, it acted like a wall. It blocked the warm water from reaching the south. Antarctica began to cool rapidly, at least in geological terms. Ice began to form, not overnight, not in a year or a century, but over tens of thousands of years, glaciers crept across the continent, ice sheets spread. The reflective white surface of Antarctica began to bounce sunlight back into space rather than absorbing it, and that reflected light cooled the planet further. It was a slow feedback loop, cooling causing more cooling, a world shifting gear from warm to cold, and as the world cooled, everything else shifted too. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a forest, a dense, warm forest, the kind that has covered this part of the land for millions of years. The air is still warm, but there is something different in it now, a sharpness, a dryness perhaps, in what used to be reliably humid air. You look out from the forest edge and see, stretching away in the distance, something new, not trees, not dense canopy, something lower, something open, grassland. Grass, in the deep history of the Earth, is actually a relatively recent invention. True grasslands did not spread widely across the planet until the late Eocene and into the next epoch, the Oligocene. Before that, the world was mostly forest, from equator to pole. But as the climate cooled and dried slightly at higher latitudes, forests retreated, and in the spaces they left behind, grasses moved in. Grasses are extraordinary plants. They are tough. They can survive drought. They can survive being eaten because they grow from the base of their stems, not the top, so a grazing animal cannot kill them simply by eating the leaves. They spread quickly. They colonize open ground, and they change the world in ways that are still shaping life today. For the mammals of the Cenozoic, the spread of grasslands was an invitation, an enormous, open invitation. For a moment, just breathe. Feel the quiet of the night around you. There is no urgency here, no deadline, just the slow, soft passage of time and the sound of my voice and the gentle turning of the world. If your breathing has slowed, that is good. If your thoughts have softened, that is good too. Let us continue. Chapter 6. The Oligocene. Smaller, cooler, quieter. The epoch that followed the Eocene is called the Oligocene. It lasted from about 34 million years ago to about 23 million years ago. 11 million years, a quiet transitional time. If the Eocene was a grand, lush summer, then the Oligocene was early autumn, still warm in many places, but with a new crispness in the air. The colours changing slowly, the forests pulling back from the poles, the grasslands spreading. The Oligocene is sometimes overlooked in popular science. It does not have the dramatic creatures of the later epochs. It does not have the extraordinary warmth of the Eocene. It is a middle chapter, a transition. But middle chapters matter. Middle chapters are where things shift, where new paths are quietly chosen, long before anyone can see where they lead. In the Oligocene, the mammals continue to evolve and diversify. The strange experimental creatures of the Eocene, those halfway shapes, those early attempts, were mostly gone now. In their place came something more recognizable, more like the animals we would see in a zoo or a wildlife documentary today. Early deer-like creatures, early relatives of pigs and hippos, early elephants, small and strange, walking through open woodlands in Africa. Early cats and dogs, not quite the same as their modern descendants, but clearly their ancestors, hunting in the cooling forests. The world was becoming more familiar. And then there were the giants. The Oligocene had its own version of giant creatures, different from the Eocene's strange experiments but equally impressive. The most remarkable was a creature called Paraceratherium, or, by an older name, Indricotherium. It is the largest land mammal that ever lived. Picture this, a creature shaped somewhat like a rhinoceros, but without any horn. Instead of a horn, it had a long, flexible upper lip, something like a very short trunk, good for pulling leaves from tall branches. It stood nearly 5.5 meters tall at the shoulder. Its head reached up to 8 or 9 meters from the ground. It weighed somewhere between 15 and 20 tons, heavier than several elephants standing side by side, and it was gentle. It ate leaves. It moved slowly through open forests and woodland edges, pulling down branches with its huge rubbery lip, chewing quietly. Imagine standing next to one of these creatures. Imagine how small you would feel. How very, very small. Its footsteps would shake the ground a little. Its breathing would be slow and deep, like the rhythm of something that has no reason to hurry. Its eyes, small and dark, would look down at you with a kind of complete indifference. Not cruelty, not threat, just the indifference of something so large that almost nothing in the world concerns it. There is something deeply calming about that image. The great, slow indifference of a giant who means no harm. Paraceratherium roamed across Asia and Europe during the Oligocene. It left fossils in what is now Pakistan, China, Mongolia, and several European countries, and then, like so many of the great Cenozoic experiments, it went extinct. Its line ended. No direct descendants, just bones in the rock waiting to be found. Just bones and our imaginations and the quiet wonder of knowing such a thing once walked the earth. Let us drift a little further. Chapter 7. When the world warmed again. Time moves in the Cenozoic not like a straight line, but like a slow tide, cooling and then warming a little, and then cooling again, but never quite returning to the same place twice, always changing, always moving, like breath. After the Oligocene, the next epoch is called the Miocene, and the Miocene, which lasted from about 23 million years ago to about 5.5 million years ago, was another long, productive, extraordinary chapter in the life of the planet. The Miocene is a time of abundance. Grasslands by now have spread enormously across the continents. Africa, Asia, North America, South America, all now have vast open plains, rolling savannas and seasonal grasslands stretching to the horizon. And with that abundance of grass came an abundance of grazers. Horses, true horses now, bigger than the little hippas of the Eocene, spread across North America and Asia. Their teeth had grown longer and harder, better suited to grinding the tough silica-rich grasses. Their legs had grown longer and more powerful, better suited to running across open plains. Their 3 toes had slowly been reducing generation by generation, until eventually they would have just one. The single hoof of the modern horse. It took over 50 million years for a horse to become a horse. 50 million years of small, gradual changes. 50 million years of longer legs and harder teeth and better instincts for running. All of it invisible in any single generation, but unmistakable in the fossil record. Evolution is, perhaps, the most patient artist in the universe. In Africa during the Miocene, something else was quietly happening. The great forests that still covered much of the continent were home to a flourishing group of primates. Apes, creatures related to us, though not yet like us, were extraordinarily diverse in the Miocene. Scientists have found fossils of dozens of different ape species from this time, species that lived in trees, species that came down to the ground, species that were large and species that were small. One of these apes was called proconsul. It lived in the forests of what is now Kenya and Uganda. It was roughly the size of a large dog or a small chimpanzee. It moved through the trees with a kind of careful, deliberate grace. It ate fruit and leaves. It had no tail, an important distinction. Tailed primates are monkeys. Tailless primates are apes. Proconsul is considered by many scientists to be one of the earliest known apes, a distant ancestor of all the apes alive today, including gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, gibbons, and humans. Looking at a reconstruction of Proconsul, which scientists have made from very detailed fossils, it is difficult to see much of yourself in it. The face is flat, the eyes wide set, the body built for climbing. Nothing about it looks like it will eventually stand upright and look at the stars. But that is the wonder of deep time, isn't it? The beginning never looks like the ending. For a moment, just breathe. Wherever your body is right now, let it rest. Let your muscles become soft and heavy, like sand settling at the bottom of a still lake. If your eyes want to close, let them. If you want to yawn, please do. Yawning is not rude here. Yawning is welcome. Yawning means your body is doing exactly what it should. I will keep the story going softly. Chapter 8. Seas that rose and fell. In the Miocene, the sea also had a story to tell. The Mediterranean Sea, which today is a familiar blue expanse between Europe and Africa, was in the Miocene a very different body of water. During a period called the Messinian Salinity Crisis, which began about 6 million years ago, the connection between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea was closed. The land slowly rose and pushed up, blocking the narrow passage we now call the Strait of Gibraltar. And then, slowly, the Mediterranean began to dry up. Not all at once, not overnight, but over hundreds of thousands of years. Without the Atlantic refilling it, the Mediterranean evaporated. It shrank. It left behind enormous salt flats on the floor of a basin that was once a sea. At its deepest point, the floor of this evaporating sea sat more than 3 kilometers below sea level, in a blazing hot, lifeless desert of white salt. Imagine standing at the edge of what had been the Mediterranean Sea, looking down into a vast depression, the air shimmering with heat, white salt crystals stretching to the horizon, no water, no waves, just silence and heat, and the strange echoing emptiness of a place where water used to be. It is one of the most dramatic events in recent geological history, and it happened in quiet geological time, invisible to any creatures who were living then. And then, about 5.5 million years ago, something gave way. The rock barrier at the Strait of Gibraltar eroded, the Atlantic broke through, and the water that flooded back into the Mediterranean basin was not a slow trickle. It was, by some estimates, one of the greatest waterfalls in Earth's history. A roaring, cascading flood of ocean water pouring over the lip of the barrier and falling into the deep, empty basin below. For perhaps decades or centuries, the water fell and rose. The Mediterranean filled again, and the sea we know today was reborn. This event is called the Zanclean Flood, and it happened so long ago that not a single creature alive today has any memory of it. But the rock remembers. The salt layers left behind, buried under miles of ocean floor, are still there. Scientists can read them like pages in a very, very old book. The world writes its story in stone and salt and ice, and we're only just learning how to read it. Chapter 9. Africa changes, and so does life. As the Miocene moved toward its end, and as we cross into the Pliocene, a shorter epoch lasting from about 5.5 million years ago to about 2.5 million years ago, Africa was changing. The forests of East Africa, which had been home to dozens of ape species during the height of the Miocene, were beginning to thin. The climate in this region was becoming drier and more seasonal. The great continuous carpet of forest was breaking up into patches, separated by expanding grasslands and open scrubland. For the apes who lived in those forests, this was a challenge. Some of them retreated deeper into the forest that remained. They are the ancestors of the chimpanzees and gorillas we know today, forest creatures to this day. But others found themselves at the forest edge, and looking out at the open land beyond the trees, and some of them, over many generations, began to venture out. Standing upright, walking on 2 legs, has some advantages in open grassland. You can see further above the tall grass. You free your hands, which can then carry food or tools. You move more efficiently over long distances, but it's also dangerous. In the open, you are visible. There are no trees to climb for safety. The world is wide and exposed, and yet some of our ancestors made that step, quite literally. The earliest known upright walking hominins, the family that includes us and our closest evolutionary relatives, appear in the fossil record in Africa during the late Miocene and early Pliocene. Species like Australopithecus, which means southern ape, walked upright but still had many features of earlier apes. A small brain, a prominent jaw, arms still somewhat long, good for climbing. One of the most famous individuals in all of paleontology is a member of this group. A partial skeleton discovered in Ethiopia in 1974, belonging to a species called Australopithecus afarensis. The scientist who found her nicknamed her Lucy, after the Beatles song that was playing at the camp the night of the discovery. Lucy lived about 3.5 million years ago. She was small, probably about 1 meter tall, weighing around 29 kilograms. She walked upright, as her knee and hip joints clearly show. She probably also spent time in trees. She's not our direct ancestor. Scientists are careful about that. But she's very close to the trunk of our family tree. She's something like a cousin, many times removed. When I think about Lucy, I think about how strange and tender it is that we found her. That after 3.5 million years, buried in dry Ethiopian rock, her bones survived. That someone thought to look there. That her skeleton was enough to tell us her name in a way. Enough to tell us she walked. Enough to tell us something about how she moved through the world. She's been in the earth longer than our entire species has existed. And now, in a sense, she is known. She has a name. People all over the world have heard of her. For a moment, just breathe. Think of how long 3.5 million years is. Think of how many nights have passed since Lucy last looked up at the sky. How many seasons, how many storms. And here you are, lying in the dark, hearing about her. Time is the strangest and most beautiful thing. Let your body rest. Yeah, let your mind wander if it wants to. Let the story continue around you like water flowing around smooth stones. Chapter 10. The ice begins to come. We are now approaching the end of the Pliocene and the beginning of the most recent epoch, the one we're still living in today, the Pleistocene. But before we step into it, let us pause for a moment at the edge. Around 2.5 million years ago, something began to shift in the rhythms of the Earth. The planet had been slowly cooling since the Eocene, with some warmer interruptions along the way. But now the cooling entered a new phase, a more intense phase. Ice sheets began to grow, not just in Antarctica, but in the Northern Hemisphere too, in what would become Canada, Scandinavia, Russia and Northern Europe. Glaciers crept slowly southward. Great walls of ice are, and sometimes kilometers thick, advancing across the land, and then retreating, and then advancing again. The Pleistocene, which lasted from about 2.5 million years ago to about 11,000 years ago, was marked by this rhythm of ice ages, cold periods called glacials, during which ice covered vast stretches of the northern hemisphere, and warmer periods called interglacials, during which the ice retreated and the land bloomed again. These cycles repeated over and over, driven by tiny wobbles and tilts in the Earth's orbit around the Sun. Small astronomical changes that slightly altered how much sunlight different parts of the Earth received. These are called Milankovitch cycles, after the Serbian scientist who worked out the mathematics of them. It is a remarkable thing, the idea that the tilt of our planet's axis, and changing by just a degree or two over tens of thousands of years, was enough to trigger ice ages, enough to bury half a continent under ice, enough to lower sea levels by over 100 meters as water locked up in ice sheets left the oceans. The world responds to small changes. Given enough time, it is patient like that. During the great ice ages of the Pleistocene, the world looked completely different from today. Where now there are deep oceans between continents, there were land bridges. Britain was connected to mainland Europe. Alaska was connected to Siberia by a broad, flat plain called Beringia, which is now the Bering Strait. Animals crossed these bridges, plants spread along them, and so, eventually did people. The great megafauna of the Pleistocene, the woolly mammoths, the cave lions, the giant ground sloths, and the short-faced bears, the woolly rhinoceroses, all lived in this era of ice and cold and open tundra. These were extraordinary creatures. The woolly mammoth, perhaps the most famous of them, was not actually larger than a modern elephant. It was roughly the same size, sometimes a little smaller, but it was magnificently adapted to the cold. A thick undercoat of dense, soft wool, an outer layer of long, coarse guard hairs, sometimes reaching to the ground, a thick layer of fat beneath the skin, ears small and close to the head to conserve heat, tusks long and curving, possibly used to sweep snow away from the tough frozen grass beneath. They lived in herds, as elephants do today. They travelled across the cold open plains, the mammoth steppe, yes, scientists call it, that stretched from Western Europe all the way across Siberia and into North America. They were the gentle giants of an Ice Age world, and we knew them. Our own ancestors, the fully modern Homo sapiens who emerged in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago and spread across the world over tens of thousands of years, encountered mammoths, hunted them, drew them on cave walls in stunning detail with red and ochre pigment pressed by firelight. The cave paintings of Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain show mammoths, horses, aurochs, deer, and bison, all painted with astonishing skill by people who lived alongside these animals, people who understood them, people who watched them closely enough to capture the curve of their tusk, the shaggy outline of their coat, the way they held their heads. We are standing in those caves, and some people still can, though carefully, and looking at those paintings, you can feel something very hard to describe. A connection across 30,000 years. A recognition. Those hands that painted were like your hands. That curiosity, that need to make something beautiful and permanent, was like your curiosity. The Ice Ages shaped us. The cold and the open land and the megafauna we hunted and feared and painted, all of it shaped our bodies, our instincts, our minds. We are children of the Pleistocene in many ways, and we carry it with us, even tonight, as we lie warm and safe under our blankets, with the dark and the cold held outside our walls. For a moment, just breathe. Feel how warm you are. Feel how safe. Outside, the world is whatever it is, night or rain or stars, but in here, you're warm, you're still, you're held. The deep past is a long, long story, and you're its latest chapter. A chapter made of star stuff and ancient seas and millions of years of small, patient changes. Rest in that thought for a moment. Let it be a comfort. Let the heavy weight of your body sink a little deeper into rest. We have come a long way tonight. From the ash-covered world after the Great Extinction, through the warm, lush forests of the Eocene, through the cooling Oligocene, through the spreading grasslands of the Miocene, through the footsteps of Lucy and the dust of the Pliocene, and now to the great cold rhythms of the Pleistocene. We have covered millions upon millions of years together, slowly, gently, with no rush, and there is still more to come. In the next part of our journey, we will walk deeper into the age of ice. We will meet more of the extraordinary creatures who shared the frozen world with our ancestors. we will follow the slow melting of the last ice age and the flowering of the Holocene, the warm, stable, brief moment in geological time in which all of human civilization has unfolded. If you are just settling in now, that is perfectly fine. You do not need to have heard the earlier parts of this story to enjoy where we're going tonight. All you need is a comfortable place to rest, and a willingness to let your mind wander gently through deep time. And if you have been here from the beginning, then welcome back, old friend. We have travelled a long way together already, through the warm Eocene forests, through the cooling Oligocene, through the spreading grasslands of the Miocene, and the first upright footsteps of our distant ancestors in the Paleocene. Now we are standing at the edge of the ice, the Pleistocene, the great age of glaciers and megafauna and cold open plains stretching to the horizon under a pale, enormous sky. Get comfortable, let your body settle, let your breathing slow. We're going in. Imagine you're standing on a plain so wide that the horizon seems impossibly far away. The sky above you is a clean, hard blue, the kind of blue that only happens in very cold, very dry air. The sun is low, even at midday, casting long golden shadows across the land. Beneath your feet the ground is frozen. Not the soft frost of a winter morning, but deep, permanent frozen ground. What scientists call permafrost, that goes down many meters below the surface. The topsoil above it is thin, and in the short, bright summer, it thaws just enough to let tough grasses and sedges and low, flowering plants push through. In every direction, as far as you can see, there is grass, pale gold, brown, silver in the wind. It rustles constantly, a soft, dry, whispering sound that fills the air like quiet music. This is the Mammoth Steppe, the great cold grassland that once covered enormous stretches of the northern hemisphere during the height of the Pleistocene ice ages. It stretched from Western Europe across Russia and Siberia, across the land bridge of Beringia, and into the northern parts of North America. At its greatest extent, it was one of the largest ecosystems the world has ever known, and it was full of life. The woolly mammoth is the creature we think of first, and rightly so. But the Mammoth Steppe was home to so many others. The woolly rhinoceros, Duelodonta antiquitatis, moved across this cold plain in smaller numbers, stocky and powerful, with a massive flat horn on its nose that may have been used to sweep snow away from the grass beneath. The woolly rhino was a creature perfectly built for the cold. Its fur was thick and reddish-brown. Its body was low-slung and heavy, built to conserve heat. Its tiny ears, like the mammoth's, were adapted to prevent frostbite. It moved slowly across the steppe, grazing and sniffing the cold air. It was not aggressive unless threatened. It was simply a large, quiet animal, doing what large, quiet animals do, eating, moving, resting, living its life in a world of cold wind and grass. Nearby, a different kind of creature moved more quickly. The cave lion, Panthera spelaea, was one of the largest cats that ever lived, bigger than any modern lion, long-legged and powerful, with a coat that was perhaps paler and thicker than its African relatives. It hunted on the open steppe, where speed and endurance mattered more than the stalking stealth of a forest predator. It hunted horses, reindeer, young mammoths if it could, perhaps woolly rhinos if desperate enough. It lived in small groups, possibly like modern lions, sharing territory and sometimes cooperating in the hunt. Scientists know about cave lions partly from fossils, but also from those ancient paintings we spoke of earlier. Cave paintings in France and Spain show cave lions with remarkable clarity. The shape of the muzzle, the angle of the back, the powerful shoulders, some painted by people who had seen these creatures with their own eyes, who had perhaps feared them, perhaps hunted them, perhaps told stories about them around a fire. For a moment, just breathe. Feel the cold air of the mammoth steppe, even if the air around you right now is warm. Imagine that cold, clean, grass-scented wind. Imagine the silence that stretches between one sound and the next, on a plain so wide that sound seems to dissolve into the distance. The Pleistocene world was a world of extraordinary scale. Everything was bigger. The land felt bigger because of how far you could see. The animals were bigger. The cold was deeper, the summers shorter, the sky somehow more present. It was a hard world, but it was not a cruel one. It was simply a world with its own rules, its own rhythms, its own beauty. Chapter 12. The Cave Bear and the Underground Dark. Let us step away from the open steppe for a moment and go somewhere quieter, somewhere darker. Follow me into the mouth of a cave. The entrance is wide, a broad arch of pale limestone with moss growing in the shaded corners where moisture collects. The air from inside the cave is cold. Colder than outside, even in summer, because caves hold the deep cold of the earth in their stone walls. As you step inside, the sound of the wind fades. The light dims. The smell changes. Earth and mineral and something older. Something that has no name. This is a cave bear den. The cave bear, Ursus spelaeus, was one of the most impressive animals of Pleistocene Europe. Larger than a modern brown bear, more massive in the head and shoulders. With a steeply domed forehead and powerful teeth suited more to grinding plant material than to tearing meat. Despite its fearsome size, the cave bear was probably mostly a herbivore, eating roots and berries and whatever the forest could provide. But in winter, it hibernated, and the caves of limestone Europe were its bedroom. Scientists have found caves in Austria, France, Germany, Romania, and many other places where the bones of cave bears lie in extraordinary numbers. In some caves, the remains of hundreds of individual bears have been found. Generations of animals returning to the same safe, dark chamber year after year, sleeping away the coldest months in the deep quiet of the earth. The floor of the cave in places bears the marks of their presence, hollows in the soft limestone where bears lay for months, and scratch marks on the walls perhaps made as they shifted in their sleep or woke briefly in the deep winter dark. There is something very intimate about those scratch marks. A creature, enormous and ancient, lying in the dark, breathing slowly. Alive in the way that sleeping things are alive. Not quite present, not quite absent. Somewhere between the waking world and something deeper. Hibernation is one of the most extraordinary things an animal can do. To slow the heart to just a few beats per minute. To drop the body temperature, to live off stored fat for months without eating or drinking, to essentially pause the business of being alive and wait for warmth to return. There is a gentleness in that, a surrender. Maybe that is why the image of a sleeping bear in a cave feels in some strange way comforting. All winter, while the world above ground was locked in ice and wind and grey cold, the bear slept. Breathing slowly in the dark, dreaming perhaps of summer and berries and warm sun on fur. And in the spring they woke, heavy and slow at first, blinking in the pale new light, then stretching and emerging and walking out into a world that had been quietly, patiently waiting for them. I find something very lovely in that image, the world waiting for the sleeper to wake. The world going nowhere, the world always there. Let that thought sit with you for a moment. You are the sleeper, and the world will still be here. For a moment, just breathe. If your body feels heavy, let it be heavy. If your thoughts are slowing, let them slow. Sleep, if it comes, is not an ending. It is just the world waiting patiently for you to return. Chapter 13. Humans enter the story. Now we must talk about something that changes everything. Us. Homo sapiens, our species, Modern humans appeared in Africa roughly 300,000 years ago, according to current fossil evidence. We're remarkably recent in the context of the Cenozoic. If the entire Cenozoic were compressed into a single year, humans would appear in the last few hours of the last day of December. We are, in geological terms, a very new arrival. And yet, within a few 100,000 years of our appearance, the blink of an eye in deep time, we'd spread across nearly every environment on Earth. We crossed mountain ranges and deserts and open ocean. We followed the great herds of megafauna across frozen tundra. We built shelters and made fire and created art and buried our dead. No other species in the history of life on Earth has spread so fast, or changed its environment so profoundly, or told stories about what it saw. The story we're telling tonight, this long, slow journey through 66 million years, is itself something only we could do. Only we can look back through time and try to understand what the world was before us. Only we can feel wonder about a world we never saw. That is a remarkable thing about human consciousness. We can imagine the past. We can feel something for creatures that died millions of years ago. We can stand in a museum in front of a mammoth skeleton and feel something close to awe, close to grief, close to tenderness. We did not know the mammoths personally, and yet we mourn them in a way. That says something beautiful about us. Our early ancestors spread out of Africa in waves over many thousands of years. They moved through the Middle East, into Asia, into Europe, eventually into the frozen north and across Beringia into the Americas. They encountered environments utterly unlike the African savanna where our species was born. They encountered new animals, new plants, new weathers, new dangers, and they adapted. Remarkably, brilliantly, continuously adapted. In the cold north, they made warm clothing from animal skins. They built shelters from mammoth bones and hide when no trees were available. They stored food. They cooperated in ways that no other animal had quite managed, not just within a family group but across larger communities, sharing knowledge and resources with people they were not closely related to. Language was the key, and many scientists believe the ability to share complex information, not just a warning cry but a story, not just a gesture but a plan, not just a feeling but an idea. Language let us share what we knew with people who had not seen it themselves. It let us accumulate knowledge across generations. It let us tell stories around fires about what the world was and what it might become. It let us be here, tonight, together. For a moment, just breathe. Think about how extraordinary it is that language brought us to this moment. That somewhere in our deep past, a creature sat by a fire and told a story to another creature, and that small act, repeated billions of times across hundreds of thousands of years, eventually led to this. A voice in the dark, a story about time, a listener resting quietly, letting the words wash over them like water. We are in some ways still sitting by that fire. The fire is just smaller now, more private. The stories are told in different ways, but the impulse is the same. Chapter 14. The megafauna vanish. There is a quiet sadness in this part of the story. I will tell it gently. At the end of the Pleistocene, something happened to the great megafauna of the world. The mammoths, the woolly rhinos, the cave lions, the cave bears, the giant ground sloths of North and South America, creatures the size of elephants that moved slowly through the forests, rearing up on their hind legs to reach the highest branches. The glyptodonts, enormous armadillo-like creatures with domed shells as big as a small car. The giant short-faced bear of North America, taller than any bear alive today when standing on its hind legs. The aurochs, the wild ancestor of domestic cattle, enormous and proud, all of them gone, most of them extinct by around 10,000 years ago, at the close of the last ice age, what happened? This is one of the most debated questions in all of paleontology, and the answer is probably complicated. There were two things happening at once, and they may have combined in a way that was too much for many species to survive. The first was climate change. As the last ice age ended, the climate warmed relatively quickly. The mammoth steppe, that vast cold grassland, began to shrink. The permafrost melted in places, and the dry, productive cold weather grasses gave way to wetter, boggier vegetation. The environment that had supported enormous herds of large grazers for hundreds of thousands of years was disappearing. The second was us. Humans had been in North America for perhaps 15,000 years or less when the megafauna there collapsed. In Australia, the pattern was even clearer. When humans arrived roughly 50,000 years ago, the continent's megafauna, giant wombats, enormous lizards, a bird taller than an emu, vanished within thousands of years. In Africa, where humans had lived alongside the megafauna for hundreds of thousands of years, more large animals survived. Because the African megafauna evolved alongside us and learned over long generations to be appropriately cautious. In the Americas and Australia, the animals had never seen a human before and had no instilled wariness of us. We were new, and we were effective hunters, and the combination of our hunting and the changing climate may have been more than most species could handle. It is a sobering thought. We are a species that has always shaped the world around us. This is not something new. It did not begin with the Industrial Revolution. It began perhaps with those first hunters on the mammoth steppe, following the herds across the frozen plain, bringing fire and cooperation and stone tools to a world that had never faced anything quite like us before. But I do not want to end this chapter in heaviness, because there is another side to this story. The end of the Pleistocene megafauna was a loss, a real and profound loss. The world became quieter. The great herds thinned, the tracks of enormous feet in the mud became rarer and then vanished entirely. But life did not stop. The Holocene, current epoch, the warm interglacial period that began about 11,000 years ago, is its own kind of abundance. Smaller, perhaps, in terms of individual animal size, more fragmented in terms of wilderness, but still extraordinary. Forests grew back across the northern hemisphere as the ice retreated. Grasslands bloomed. Rivers ran full and clear. Oceans warmed and their surface waters teemed with life. The megafauna that survived, elephants, rhinoceroses, hippos, bears, great whales, lions, continued in their quiet, magnificent way. And in the Holocene, something else happened. Something that changed the world as profoundly as any extinction or ice age. Agriculture. For a moment, just breathe. Notice the weight of your body, the warmth of wherever you are lying, the quiet around you or the soft sounds that fill the space. You are here in the Holocene, in the warm, brief, extraordinary moment in geological time when all of human civilization has unfolded. When we went from small bands of hunter-gatherers to farmers, to towns, to cities, to the world you know. All of that. Every city, every poem, every piece of music, every scientific discovery, every war, every act of kindness, every painting on a cave wall and every painting on a gallery wall, and all of it happened in the last 11,000 years. A heartbeat in the life of the Earth. Chapter 15. The Holocene. A warm moment in deep time. The Holocene is unusual, in geological terms, for one reason above all others. It has been stable. Not perfectly stable, of course. Climates have shifted within the Holocene. Droughts have come and gone. Civilizations have risen and fallen, partly in response to environmental changes. The monsoons have strengthened and weakened. Small ice ages, like the one that gripped parts of Europe between roughly the 14th and 19th centuries, have come and gone. But compared to the wild swings of the Pleistocene, the deep freeze of glacial periods followed by the rapid warmth of interglacials, the Holocene has been remarkably calm, remarkably even. A stable, warm, productive moment in Earth's long story. And it is precisely that stability that allowed human civilization to develop. Agriculture requires predictable seasons, predictable rains, predictable winters and springs. A farmer planting seeds needs to know, more or less, when the rains will come and when they will stop. Civilizations need reliable rivers, reliable harvests, reliable weather patterns sustained over long enough periods to build institutions, laws, traditions, cities. The Holocene gave us that. For 11,000 years, the climate of Earth has been more stable than it had been for hundreds of thousands of years before. And in that narrow window of stability, everything we call human history happened. Think about that for a moment. Every story ever told around a fire or in a book, every song, every invention, every city, every garden, every moment of love and grief and wonder that a human being has ever experienced. All of it happened in this brief warm spell. In geological terms, the Holocene is barely a footnote, a thin layer of sediment on top of an enormous stack of rock, a fraction of the Earth's long story. And yet it contains everything we know, everything we are. There is something both humbling and deeply moving about that. We are small in the context of deep time, very small. Our whole civilization is small, but within our smallness we have been extraordinary. For a moment, just breathe. You are part of the Holocene. You are part of this brief, warm, extraordinary chapter in Earth's history. Your life, however it feels to you right now, large or small, important or ordinary, is part of a story that stretches back 66 million years and will continue long after us. You're not separate from the Earth's history, you are its latest page, and that page matters, even if you never know exactly how. Let your body soften, let your breathing become slow and regular, like the slow tidal pull of the sea. We have come a long way tonight, through the mammoth steppe and the cave bear's den, through the spread of humans across a cold and extraordinary world, through the quiet sadness of the megafauna's passing, and into the warm stability of the Holocene. In the next part of our journey, we will slow down even further. We will spend more time in reflection, more time in the quiet spaces between facts, where meaning lives. We will think about what all of this 66 million years of change and life and loss and abundance means for us tonight, lying here in the dark. We will let the story begin to soften, the way light softens at the end of a long day. But that is for next time. For now, just rest. Let the story settle around you like dust in a still room, quiet and slow and covering everything softly. The Earth is old and patient and full of wonder, and tonight it holds you in its long, slow arms. Sleep if you can, rest if you cannot. Either way, you're exactly where you should be. We have travelled a long way together through the Cenozoic. We have walked through the ash-covered world after the Great Extinction. We have stood in the warm, lush forests of the Eocene and felt the humid air on our skin. We have watched the slow cooling of the planet, the spread of grasslands, the rise of the great herds, the coming of the ice. We have met extraordinary creatures. The gentle giant Procerotherium, moving slowly through open woodlands, the woolly mammoth, breathing slow clouds of vapour on a cold steppe morning, the cave bear sleeping in the underground dark through the long winter months, Lucy, small and upright, walking across the dust of ancient Africa. Now we're going to slow down even further. The information will become a little lighter. the reflection a little deeper. We are entering the final stretches of this long, slow journey, and the goal now is not to fill your mind with more facts, but to let everything we have explored together settle into something softer, something restful, something that feels perhaps like understanding, not the sharp understanding of a quiz or an exam, the soft understanding that comes from sitting with something long enough that it becomes familiar, the way you understand a piece of music not by analysing it, but by hearing it many times until it feels like something you have always known. Let the Cenozoic be like that for you. Let it be something you have always known. Chapter 17. What the fossils remember. There is a hillside somewhere in Wyoming, dry and rocky and pale gold in the afternoon sun, a place where the land has been slowly eroding for thousands of years, layer by layer, grain by grain, carried away by wind and the rare flash of summer rain. And in that eroding hillside, bones are slowly coming to the surface, bones that have been waiting in the rock for 50 million years. This is what fossils are. Not just old bones. They are patience made visible. They are time given a physical form that we can hold in our hands. They are the Earth's way of remembering. The fossilization process is remarkable and rare. When a creature dies, most of the time its body decomposes quickly. Bacteria and insects and scavengers return its matter to the soil, to the water, to the air. Within years, and sometimes within weeks, there is nothing left. But occasionally, rarely in just the right conditions, a body is buried quickly before decomposition can take everything. Perhaps it falls into a river and is covered by sediment. Perhaps it sinks into the mud at the edge of a lake. Perhaps volcanic ash buries it in a single catastrophic moment. And then, slowly, over thousands and millions of years, the minerals in the groundwater seep into the bone and replace the original material molecule by molecule with stone. The shape of the bone is preserved in extraordinary detail sometimes, every groove and ridge and tiny foramen, but the substance has been replaced. It is no longer bone, it is rock in the exact shape of bone, a memory made of stone. When a paleontologist finds a fossil and carefully brushes away the surrounding rock, they are, in a sense, waking something up, returning something to the light that has been in darkness for an almost incomprehensible length of time. There is something quietly sacred about that act. Every fossil in every museum was once a living creature, was once warm and breathing and moving through a world that no longer exists, had a heartbeat, had hunger and rest and whatever passed for feeling in a creature without human consciousness. And now it is stone, and now it is behind glass, and now children press their noses against the glass and look up at it with wide eyes. Time does astonishing things. For a moment, just breathe. Notice your own breathing, the rise and fall of your chest, the warmth of the air as it enters, the slight coolness as it leaves. This is the thing that fossils no longer have. This simple, ordinary, extraordinary thing. You are breathing, you are alive, you're warm and real and present in this moment. And 66 million years of slow, patient change led to exactly this. To you, breathing, in the dark, right now. That is not a small thing. Chapter 18. What deep time teaches us. I want to talk about something a little softer now. Something that is less about facts and more about what those facts feel like. When we look at the deep history of the Earth, when we really sit with the scale of time we've been exploring tonight, something happens to our sense of proportion. Something shifts. The things that felt large and heavy today, the worries, the plans, the small frustrations and the bigger fears, they do not disappear. They are still real. They still matter, in the way that the things in our daily lives always matter. but they look a little different when placed against the backdrop of 66 million years. A worry about tomorrow looks different next to 50 million years of Eocene forest. A disappointment about something that did not go the way we hoped looks different next to the slow, patient rebuilding of a world after a mass extinction. The problems of a single human life, and I do not mean to make them small, because they are not small to the person living them, look different when you hold them against the kind of time we have been exploring tonight. Not smaller, exactly, but less urgent, less sharp, more like part of a larger pattern. There is a word that philosophers sometimes use for this feeling. It is called the overview effect, though that phrase was coined originally to describe what astronauts feel when they see the Earth from space. A sudden, overwhelming awareness of how small and fragile and interconnected everything is. How the borders between countries are invisible. How thin the atmosphere is. A mere whisper of air between the living surface and the empty cold of space. The feeling we get from deep time is something like the same thing, but in the dimension of time rather than space. A kind of temporal overview, a sense of how small any single moment is in the vast river of geological time, and yet, somehow, how precious, because each of those small moments is the whole world to the creature living it. The mammoth, breathing slowly on the cold steppe, was not thinking about the end of the Pleistocene. It was thinking about the grass beneath the snow, and the warmth of the herd around it, and the particular cold of this morning. Its moment was everything to it. Your moment is everything to you. And that is not a contradiction with deep time. It is the whole point of it. For a moment, just breathe. Let the day's concerns become a little softer. Let them drift a little further away, the way the shore gets further away when you're floating on calm water. You do not need to solve anything tonight. You do not need to plan anything tonight. Tonight, you are just here, floating on the surface of deep time, held up by 66 million years of life and change and the slow turning of the world. That is enough. That is more than enough. Chapter 19. The Ocean's Long Memory. Let us return for a little while to the sea. The ocean is perhaps the greatest keeper of the Cenozoic story, more ancient even than the land in some ways, and far less disturbed by the comings and goings of ice ages. Deep in the ocean, in the sediment that has been settling layer by layer for millions of years, the record of the Cenozoic is written in extraordinary detail. Tiny creatures called foraminifera, single-celled organisms that build intricate, beautiful shells of calcium carbonate, live near the ocean's surface in enormous numbers. When they die, their shells sink slowly to the ocean floor, drifting down through hundreds of meters of dark water like the softest snow imaginable, falling in slow motion. Over millions of years, these shells build up in layers, and because the chemistry of each shell reflects the temperature of the water when the creature was alive, scientists can drill into the ocean floor, extract a long column of sediment, and read the temperature history of the ocean going back millions of years. Each centimetre of that sediment column is a page in the story we have been telling tonight. The warmth of the Eocene, the cooling of the Oligocene, the ice ages of the Pleistocene, all of it written in the shells of creatures smaller than a grain of sand. The ocean remembers everything. There is something very calming about the ocean's memory, about the idea that even the smallest life, a single-celled creature with a beautiful tiny shell, living for a few weeks near the ocean surface, completely unaware of anything beyond its immediate watery world, leaves a trace, contributes to the record, adds its page to the story. Nothing is lost in deep time. Everything leaves a mark somewhere. Your life, too, leaves marks that you may never fully see. In the people who know you, in the small changes you make in the world around you, most of them invisible to you, in the ongoing, quiet, continuous effect of your presence. You're also part of the record. You're also, in your way, adding a page to the story. Let that thought be a comfort. For a moment, just breathe. Feel how still the night is, how the world outside, whatever it is doing, is continuing in its own slow way, completely indifferent to whether you're awake or asleep. The stars are in their places. The earth is turning at its steady, unhurried rate. The oceans are breathing in and out with the pull of the moon. Everything is as it should be, and you are part of it. Chapter 20. Forests that remember ancient rain. There is a kind of forest in certain parts of the world that scientists call relict forests. These are forests that have survived in isolated pockets from ancient times, protected by particular combinations of geography and climate, from the changes that swept away their relatives elsewhere. In the Canary Islands, for example, there are forests of laurel trees, laurisilva forests, that are considered the last remnant of the great subtropical forest that covered much of Europe and North Africa during the warm Miocene. Millions of years ago, these forests stretched from the Canary Islands all the way across the Mediterranean region. And then, as the climate cooled and dried, most of them disappeared. But in the Canary Islands, protected by the mild ocean climate of the Atlantic, a fragment survived. Walking into a laurisilva forest is said to feel like stepping back in time. The trees are covered in moss and lichen. The air is thick with moisture, filtered green by the canopy above. Ferns crowd the forest floor. Ancient species of laurel and holly and heather grow in ways they no longer grow anywhere else on Earth. It is a living museum, a piece of the Miocene, breathing and growing in the 21st century. There are other relict forests scattered around the world. The temperate rainforests of New Zealand contain tree species whose relatives first appeared in the Mesozoic. The ancient forests of Tasmania and southern Chile preserve lineages of trees that once grew across a united southern supercontinent called Gondwana. The forests of the Caucasus Mountains in Georgia and Azerbaijan are said to be among the most ancient in the Northern Hemisphere, preserving plant communities that go back to before the ice ages. These forests are like messages from deep time, quiet, growing, breathing messages, and they remind us that the past is never entirely gone, that pieces of it survive in unexpected places if conditions are right. Maybe that is true of more than just forests. Maybe every one of us carries something ancient in us, something that survived from a very long time ago. The love of warmth, the fear of the dark, the comfort of being held, the pull of story. These are not things we learned in childhood. They are things we were born with, things our ancestors had sitting by their fires in the Pleistocene, things our primate relatives had, and sleeping in trees in the Miocene forests. We are, in ways we do not always notice, very old. For a moment, just breathe. Notice the warmth around you. Notice how your body curls slightly toward comfort, toward softness, the way animals have always done when settling to rest. That is ancient. That is Cenozoic. That is 66 million years of evolution whispering to your body. This is safe. This is good. You can let go now. So let go. Let the weight of the day leave your body. Let your mind become quiet and soft like the floor of that ancient laurel forest, cushioned with moss and the slow fall of leaves. Chapter 21. The Rhythm of Ice and Warmth. We have talked about the Ice Ages several times in this story, but I want to return to them one more time, gently, because there is something about their rhythm that I find deeply, quietly beautiful. The Milankovitch cycles, those tiny wobbles and tilts in Earth's orbit that drive the coming and going of ice ages, operate on timescales of 20,000, 40,000, and 100,000 years, long, slow pulses, long, slow breaths of the planet. Breathing in, the ice advances, glaciers creep southward, sea levels drop, the mammoth steppe expands, the world grows colder and drier and opens up. Breathing out, the ice retreats, the glaciers melt, sea levels rise, forests spread back northward, the world grows warmer and wetter and softer. Breathing in, breathing out, over and over for millions of years. There is something almost meditative about that rhythm, something that resonates with something very deep in us. We too breathe in and breathe out. We too have our winters and summers, our cold times and warm times. We too have periods of contraction, when everything feels tight and difficult and cold, and periods of expansion, when things open up and warmth returns. We did not invent that rhythm. We inherited it from a planet that has been breathing that way for much longer than we have existed. And knowing that even the hardest, coldest times are part of a cycle, part of a breathing, that warmth will come again. There is something in that worth holding, not as a promise exactly. Life does not make promises, but as a pattern. A gentle, observable pattern, written in ice cores and ocean sediment and the fossils of ancient pollen. Cold, then warm, contraction, then expansion, winter, then spring. Always. And let that be the last thought of this part of our journey. Not a resolution or a conclusion. We are not finished yet, but a resting place. A soft place to pause before we drift into the final chapter. The earth breathes in cycles, and tonight you are breathing too. Slowly and gently and in perfect time, with a rhythm that goes back further than any story. Let your body follow that rhythm now. Let your breath be slow. Let the night deepen around you. Let everything become soft and quiet and still, the way the world becomes soft and quiet and still in the deep of winter, when the snow has fallen and everything is waiting, patient and peaceful, for the warmth that is always, always coming. If you have been here from the very beginning, then you have travelled a long way tonight, 66 million years, through warm forests and cold plains, through ancient seas and frozen tundra, through the lives of creatures so strange and beautiful they feel like something from a dream. And if you have only just arrived, drifting in at this late hour when the night is at its deepest and the world is at its most still, then welcome. You do not need to know everything that came before. You're exactly where you need to be. This is the final part of our story, and it is going to be the softest. There will be less information now, less history, less science, less dense and wonderful fact. Instead, we're going to slow down even further. We're going to let the story breathe. We're going to let everything we have learned tonight settle into the quiet spaces inside us, the way dust settles in a room when everyone has finally gone still. So if your eyes are closed, keep them closed. If your body is heavy, let it be heavy. If your thoughts are slow and blurry at the edges, that is perfect. That is exactly right. We are almost home. Chapter 23. What the Earth Holds. Think for a moment about what is beneath you right now. Not the mattress or the floor or the carpet. Deeper than that. The foundation of the building if you're inside. And then deeper still. The soil, the bedrock, the layers of sediment and stone that go down and down and down for kilometers beneath your feet. Every layer of that rock is a chapter of the story we have been telling tonight. Just a few meters down, in many places, you would find the rich, dark soil of the Holocene, the soil that human farmers have been working for 10,000 years, the soil that holds the roots of every tree, every crop, every wild plant, the soil teeming with more living organisms per teaspoon than there are people in the world. Deeper, and you would find the sediments of the Pleistocene, the gravels and clays left behind by glaciers, The river deposits from when sea levels were 100 meters lower, and rivers ran across what is now open ocean. Pollen grains, perfectly preserved in ancient lake beds, from flowers that bloomed 20,000 years ago and were never seen by human eyes. Deeper still, and you would find the rock of the Miocene and the Eocene, the limestone that was once a warm, shallow sea, the shale that was once the muddy floor of an ancient river delta, fossils pressed into the stone, shells, teeth, the occasional delicate impression of a leaf from a tree that grew in a forest that no longer exists anywhere on Earth. The earth beneath you is not empty. It is full of time, full of memory, full of the slow, accumulated record of everything that has ever happened on this planet. You're resting on top of an enormous library, and tonight we have been reading a few of its pages together. For a moment, just breathe. Feel the surface beneath you, solid and still and patient. It has been here for a very long time. It will be here for a very long time after tonight, and right now it is simply holding you. Quietly, firmly, completely. Let it. Chapter 24. The stars were there too. I want to talk about the sky for a moment. Not the sky as it is tonight, with its particular clouds or clarity, its particular darkness or glow of city light. The sky as it has always been. The deep sky. The sky behind the sky. Every night, if the clouds allow, the stars come out, and those stars, most of them, have been there for the entire Cenozoic. The same stars that were in the sky above the Eocene forests, above the mammoth steppe, above the first human campfires in Africa, are in the sky above you tonight. They have changed a little. Stars age slowly. The precise positions of stars shift slightly over millions of years as the solar system moves through the galaxy. But most of what you see on a clear night, if you could be transported back to any point in the Cenozoic and look up, would be familiar. The sky is the most constant thing in our story. The Eocene mammals never knew the sky as we know it. They had no names for the stars. They did not wonder about them the way we do, but the light fell on them just the same. Silvery, cool, ancient light, coming from distances so vast that our minds, for all their extraordinary capacity, cannot truly hold the number. And that same light has been falling on this planet for billions of years, long before the dinosaurs, long before the first complex life, long before the first living cell, perhaps, in whatever warm and mineral-rich water life first flickered into existence. Light falling on a world in the dark, and tonight, somewhere above the clouds, above the atmosphere, that light is still falling, on you, on all of us. We are not separate from that story. We are soaked in it. We are made of it. The carbon in your body was forged in the hearts of ancient stars that exploded billions of years ago. The iron in your blood was made in the same way. You are quite literally made of stardust. This is not a metaphor. It is chemistry. It is physics. It is the most factual and the most poetic thing I know. You are stardust, breathing, resting, alive. For a moment, just breathe. Let that settle into you softly. You do not need to understand it fully. You do not need to hold it clearly in your mind. Just let it be there, at the edge of your awareness, like the glow of a very distant light through closed curtains, soft and warm and real. Chapter 25. Everything that survived here is something I've been thinking about quietly all through this story. Every living thing on Earth today, every bird, every insect, every tree, every fish, every blade of grass, every human being is a survivor. And not just in the everyday sense of the word, in the deepest possible sense. Every species alive today has a lineage that goes back through the mass extinction 66 million years ago. Back through every ice age and every warm period, back through every drought and every flood, back through every volcanic winter and every shifting of the continents. Every species alive today had ancestors that were, at some point, the last of something. The last pair, or the last small group, that survived when others did not. That found shelter when others could not. That found food when others starved. That survived the winter and the drought and the darkness, and they passed on their survival one generation at a time, all the way down to the living world we know today. Your own lineage, the human lineage, the primate lineage, the mammal lineage, the vertebrate lineage, goes back through all of that. Every creature in your family tree, going back to the very first cell, survived long enough to reproduce, every single one of them, all the way back. The odds against your existence are mathematically so enormous as to be essentially impossible to calculate. And yet here you are, breathing, resting, alive on a warm night in the only geological epoch in which your civilization has ever existed, on the only planet in the universe where we know for certain that life has taken hold. If there is something worth resting peacefully about, perhaps it is that. You are an extraordinarily unlikely miracle. 66 million years of survival leading to this exact moment. Rest in that. For a moment, just breathe. Let the night be around you. Let the world be what it is. Let your body be heavy and warm and still. You've survived everything that was required to get you here. Tonight, you do not need to survive anything. Tonight, you just need to rest. Chapter 26. The world while you sleep. Something quietly beautiful happens while you sleep. The world continues, not loudly, not dramatically, but with a steady, gentle persistence that has never once failed in the entire history of this planet. Tonight, while you are sleeping or drifting towards sleep, the Earth is turning. Right now, at this very moment, the planet is rotating at about 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, carrying you and your home and your city or town or village in a slow, enormous circle around the axis of the Earth. You cannot feel it. You've never felt it. But it has not stopped. And not once in 4.5 billion years. Tonight, while you sleep, somewhere on the other side of the world it is morning. Sunlight is falling on rice fields and mountain peaks and ocean waves. Someone else is beginning their day, stepping outside into the early light, feeling the warmth on their face. Tonight, while you sleep, in the deep ocean, at the very bottom of the Pacific or the Atlantic, creatures that have never seen light are going about their lives in the cold and the dark. Fish with their own bioluminescence, glowing softly in the abyss. Giant squid moving slowly through water that has not been touched by sunlight in thousands of years. Tonight, while you sleep, trees are doing what trees do in the dark, resting their photosynthesis, circulating water slowly through their trunks and branches, yet breathing out the faintest trace of oxygen into the night air. Tonight, while you sleep somewhere in the forests of Central Africa, a family of chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, who share about 98% of our DNA, have settled into their nests in the trees. Leaves and branches bent and woven into a soft bed just above the forest floor. They are sleeping too, curled and warm, their breathing slow and easy. We are all sleeping at the same time, in different places, under the same stars. That thought makes the night feel a little less lonely, a little more connected. For a moment, just breathe. Let the world continue around you. You do not need to hold it up. It has been turning without any help for 4.5 billion years, and it will keep turning long after all of us. Your only job right now is to let go. Chapter 27. What remains? The Cenozoic is, in some ways, a story about what remains. After the Great Extinction, what remained was enough to rebuild an entire world, A few small mammals, some birds, some reptiles, some insects, some plants. Enough. More than enough. After the warmth of the Eocene faded, what remained were the seeds of new ecosystems, grasslands spreading across cooled continents, new grazers evolving to eat them, new predators evolving to hunt the grazers, a whole new way of living built on what the warmth left behind. After the great megafauna of the Pleistocene were gone, what remained were the ecosystems they had shaped, the grasslands they had grazed, the forests they had opened up, the landscapes their enormous bodies had moved through for so long that the land itself remembered their presence. After each ice age, what remained was the life that had survived, and the accumulated resilience of having survived, and the new possibilities that opened up as the world warmed again. After everything, something always remains. I think about this when I think about the hard things in human lives, the losses, the endings, the moments when something that seemed permanent simply stops. The Cenozoic teaches us, gently over millions of years, that endings are not the end of the story. They are the end of a chapter, and the next chapter begins quietly, in the space the old one left behind. Not immediately, not without loss and mourning and difficulty. These things take time, deep time sometimes, but they begin, and they always begin. For a moment, just breathe. Let whatever is heavy in you be a little lighter tonight. Not fixed. You do not need everything fixed tonight. Just a little lighter. Just enough to sleep. The world has ended and begun again, many times, and every time something remained. Something grew. Something found a way forward, one quiet generation at a time. So can you. Chapter 28. A soft inventory. Before we close, let us do something small and gentle together. A soft inventory of this moment. Not of problems or plans or things undone, just of what is here. You're somewhere warm, I hope. If not perfectly warm, then at least safer than the open mammoth steppe. At least indoors or sheltered with something between you and the night. You are breathing. Your heart is beating. And somewhere between 50 and 80 times a minute without any effort from you. Your lungs are doing their work. Your blood is moving. Your brain, even as it drifts towards sleep, is doing the remarkable, mysterious work of being alive. The night around you is doing what nights do, getting quieter, getting darker, getting more still as the hours pass and the world rests. Somewhere above you, above the ceiling, above the roof, above the atmosphere, the stars are in their places. The same stars that were in the sky above the first mammals who emerged from their burrows into the post-extinction world. The same stars that were reflected in the warm Eocene sea. The same stars that cave painters walked out under after finishing their work by firelight. And beneath you, below the floor, below the foundations, below the soil and the sediment and the rock, the deep earth is there, warm at its core, patient, old beyond imagining, holding everything on its surface with the same indifferent, steady, perfect support it has always given. You are held from below by the deep earth. You're watched over from above by ancient light, and in between, in this brief, warm moment of the Holocene, on this small blue planet in the outer arm of a spiral galaxy, you are here, breathing, resting, alive. For a moment, just breathe. There's nothing you need to do with this moment except be in it. Chapter 29. The last slow miles. We are nearly at the end of our journey now, and like all long journeys that have been good ones, there is a small, sweet sadness to approaching the end. Not a painful sadness. Just the gentle acknowledgement that something beautiful is finishing, that we have been somewhere together, and now we are coming home. The Cenozoic is 66 million years long. We have travelled through it in the space of a few quiet hours. We have compressed millions of years into paragraphs, epochs into pages, the slow work of evolution and geology into the soft passage of a night. We could not possibly have covered everything. We never could. The Cenozoic is full of stories we did not tell tonight. The evolution of whales, which we touched on only briefly. The extraordinary diversity of ancient birds who exploded into thousands of species in the early Cenozoic and filled every ecological niche the dinosaurs had left behind. Or the story of the great South American megafauna, giant ground sloths and glyptodonts, and a terrifying flightless bird called Forus racidae, the terror bird that stood nearly 3 meters tall and hunted with a beak like an axe. There is the story of the ancient Mediterranean fish and the creatures of the Tethys Sea, that vast warm body of water that once stretched between what is now Europe and Asia, before the continents closed around it and it became the smaller remnant we now call the Mediterranean. There is the story of the earliest grasses spreading quietly across cooled continents, one of the most successful plant families in Earth's history, eventually covering about a third of all the land on Earth. There is the story of flowering plants in all their wild diversity, the angiosperms, who now make up nearly 90% of all plant species, transforming the visual world of the planet into a constant pageant of colour and scent. There are so many stories still in the rock, and perhaps that is a comfortable thought to end on. Not that we have finished, but that the story is so much larger than any telling of it, that there is always more, that the Earth's history is not something that can be exhausted or completed or fully understood. It is simply too vast, too detailed, too extraordinary. You could spend 10 lifetimes studying the Cenozoic and still find new things to wonder at. That abundance, that inexhaustible depth of the world is, I think, one of the most reassuring things there is. The world is not small, it is not simple, it is not running out of wonders, and neither are you. For a moment, just breathe. Let the story become a little more distant now. Let it drift to the edges of your awareness, the way a dream does when you first wake up. Still there, still faintly present, but no longer sharp or demanding. Let it rest. Let yourself rest. Chapter 30. The softest ending. It is late now, or early, depending on how long the night has lasted for you. Either way, the world outside is doing what it always does at this hour. The small sounds of the night, the particular quality of darkness that comes in the deepest hours, when even the nocturnal animals have found their rhythms and the whole world seems to be breathing slowly together. I want to thank you for being here tonight, for giving this story your time and your quiet and your willingness to drift through 66 million years of Earth history in the dark. That is not a small thing. To be curious about the world, to want to know where we came from, to be willing to lie still and let deep time wash over you. That curiosity, that openness, is one of the most beautiful things about being human. It is the same thing that made ancient artists crawl deep into caves by firelight and paint the animals they knew. The same thing that made the first scientists look at rocks and wonder how they got there. The same thing that made someone, somewhere, look at a fossil for the first time and understand that they were holding the remains of something that once lived. We have always wanted to know, we have always wanted to understand, and we have always, in the end, needed to rest. So rest now. The Cenozoic will still be there in the morning. 66 million years is not going anywhere. The fossils are in the rock. The sediment layers are in the ocean floor. The ancient pollen is preserved in the lake beds. The scratch marks of the cave bear are still on the limestone walls. All of it will be there, patient and quiet whenever you want to return to it. But tonight, your only task is sleep. Let your body be heavy. Let your breathing slow to its nighttime rhythm, That long, deep, unhurried breath that comes when the mind finally stops asking questions and lets the body do what it has known how to do since long before there were questions to ask. Breathe in and out and in. The earth is turning. The stars are in their places. The deep ocean is breathing in its own slow way. The forests are resting. The rivers are running quiet and dark. The soil is full of life too small to see, and we're going about its ancient business in the dark. Somewhere in Africa, a herd of elephants, the closest living relatives of the great Pleistocene mammoths, are moving slowly through the night, their enormous feet making almost no sound on the soft ground. Their skin, grey and warm, barely visible in the dark. Their breathing slow and steady, like something very old and very sure of itself. They do not need to know the history of the Cenozoic to be part of it. And neither do you. You're part of it simply by being alive, simply by breathing, simply by existing in this brief, warm, extraordinary moment in the long, slow story of this planet. You are the Cenozoic continuing. You are the story still being told, and tonight, this page of the story is a quiet one, a resting one, a dark and still and peaceful one. Let the darkness hold you. Let the quiet fill the spaces between your thoughts. Let your eyes stay closed, if they are closed. Let sleep, if it comes, take you gently. You are safe. You are held. You are part of something 66 million years old and still going. And that is a beautiful thing to be. Sleep well. The story will be here in the morning. The world will be here in the morning. And so will you. Good night.